Welcome to Money Convos, where we discuss personal finance and investment tips. We are committed to helping people create wealth and achieve financial freedom. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast. Alright then, let's head into today's conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Money Convos. We are very excited that you make the time to tune in every single week to listen, learn and grow. And today we are talking about Netflix documentary which is titled Get Smart with Money. So don't worry if you've not seen it. We are having this episode such that you have plenty of insights from the hour and a half long movie, and you will see how everyday people are transforming their lives with basic financial tips. And although some of the topics or subjects that may be discussed may not necessarily relate to you in terms of the financial products that are available in your jurisdiction, we do hope that you will learn a lot from these stories and stay with us till the end of the show. And as always, I have Adam here with me to help us break it down. Hi Adam, how are you?
Hey Dennis, I'm doing good. Yourself?
I'm doing great. Okay, so let's get right into it. So the movie, Get Smart with Money, it takes us through the real financial journeys of very different individuals and families. What's awesome about it and what I feel is how relatable it is. So you've got Lindsay, who is a waitress drowning in debt. You have a professional football player trying to manage his wealth. And you even have a couple trying to retire early. And all the stories have different twists to it, and there's something to learn from all of them. And so let's get into our first story about Lindsay. So a bit of background. Lindsay is a 27-year-old woman who works 2 jobs in the service industry as a waitress. And like so many of us, she was caught in the cycle of making just enough to get by, but not enough to actually move forward financially. When she was younger, she had her own plan to go to school and become a fashion designer by her early 30s, but as you know, life happens. Things don't go your way some of the time. So, she has her dreams, but now she's working as a waitress. The financial coach now comes in, called Paula Pant, and helps her get her on track. And one thing that her coach said that really stood out to me was that the average consumer spends on 3 major things: housing, transportation, and food. And once you sit down and try your best to cut down on all those 3 things, that's where you will get your biggest savings. And so for context, these are some of the tips that Paula offered. So for housing, for instance, she said, if you think you can downsize your apartment into a smaller one where you can pay lower rent, you can do that. If you think taking on a roommate is something you can do to pay lower rent, that's something you can also do. For transportation, she recommended that if you live somewhere where having a car is an absolute necessity, then try to get something simple that can get you from point A to point B, or from where you are to where you are going easily without being so fancy. And for food, as always, as we've said in previous episodes, try not to eat out every day, but try meal prepping. That is, you shop at the beginning of the week or during the weekend, do a batch run and pre-cook your meals for the whole week. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on the tips that Paula offered to Lindsay. Eden.
Dennis, so the just like you were also saying, my initial thoughts about Lindsay was also the same, similar in the sense that you had a situation where she was drowning in debt and she was just like the average person who is struggling to move from month to month, more like hand to mouth, living hand to mouth. Even though she was working 2 jobs, she didn't seem to be able to cope with the expenses that she was making. So I also found the tips that she was given from the beginning very helpful, in that she needed to do something about her earning capacity, because just trimming down was not going to be enough, looking at the kinds of things she had to do. And one insightful statement from her coach was what she said, that there's only this much you can trim down, but in terms of how much you can bring in, there's no limits to it. And for me, that's what stayed with me from the initial, my initial reaction and my initial impressions from that really stood out for me. Yeah.
Brilliant points there then. So, there's so much you can trim to, but there's so much you can bring in. That's also an excellent point I noted from Lindsay's story. And away from, you'd say, a struggling person, now we have someone who had the opportunity to earn so much more, became a millionaire in his early 20s. And we are talking about Jalen Steeds. So Jalen, a bit of background, was a professional football player with a unique challenge. So he's making a lot of money now because he was drafted into the NFL, as known in the US. And he went from signing for $1.6 million to $280,000 within the same year. And these are some of the expenses he spent on. So after getting the deal, he had to pay his agent. Taxes took over 40% of the money. He bought a house for himself and his mother. He bought jewelry and also took his partner on vacation. And when the money got to $280,000, that's where he realized that no matter how much you have, it can drain down really fast if you don't have any plans. And mind you, none of this money was invested anywhere. All of that was going into expenses. And the twist comes in the story where he ends up getting released from his contract after just 2 years. And whilst he's also going on trials for another team, he has an injury and the team rejects him again. So it became dark times for him because he was literally living on borrowed time. He didn't know how long he could sustain himself on the little amount of money in his account. To him, it was little. And so the financial coach he met, which was Ross Mack, really helped him understand the importance of investing wisely whilst he was still earning big or whilst he still had something with him. And one thing I noticed from his story is that it's easy to think that I'll never run out of money. But the truth is, without a plan, you really can. One lesson we learned from Ramit Sethi's series was that your investment plan is important than your investment itself. And it goes to show you how very important a plan is to your goals in life. And another thing also was the lifestyle inflation that caught up with him. And so he was, in his own story, he was from a lowly background, but boom, suddenly you get a big contract, you're upgrading everything, buying houses here and there. And before you know it, you are spending more than you make, which didn't really happen in his story, but it could have happened really fast. And so having a financial plan before you earn such money, no matter how big or small it is, and budgeting for your investment or your savings is very crucial. I don't know whether you have any other insights on Jalen's story, Adam. Any peculiar insights you noticed?
Yeah, I think he also mentioned the fact that, like you said, the background from which he's coming, when it comes to money, nobody really taught him how to handle it. It was all about spending and spending. So when he hits this huge amount of money, and that was really early in life. I think he was either 20 or 21 at the time. He being having access to that huge sum of money, obviously for a young person with little experience and little training or understanding about how to handle money, the first thing he went was to splurge, move on, just spending, buying a house for his mom, buying a house for himself, going on travels, buying jewelry, expensive ones at that, to make up for I'm sure, the bad and hard times he had growing up. So that was a significant issue and showed that it did not even matter the fact that you had a lot of money coming in. It was just a matter of time, like you said. Then emergencies, or should I say, unfortunate events hit him, and now he was found in a situation where no money was coming in and his money would have fast depleted. So I'm just sure that what just kept him was when he just noticed how he moved from 1.6 to about 200,000 in a very short time. And he saw that no, this thing, there is no, probably before he would open his eyes, the money would be he would have reached out or spent everything. And then all this calamity that befell him, getting hurt, getting out of his contract, then the new team not taking him, then he finds himself in a very tight situation where it was not a good place to be. So that made him start thinking a lot and thinking a lot about how to make good his money, how to invest the money, how to make his money grow, and that was one of the important things that I noticed, that he acted quite fast because the story could have ended in a very, very bad way, but I liked the fact that he noticed that something was wrong and he quickly had to take action before things went south.
Yeah, so it was almost a fall from grace for him, but his financial coach really helped him. That was Ross Mack. He taught Jalen to tone down the lifestyle inflation, because at a point he did some estimations with him, as in, how much have you spent on your jewelry pieces? And he gave him the figure and told him, if you had invested this in the S&P 500, this is how much you would have gotten till now. And that made him realize, he's not making his money work for him. He's not putting in effort in sustaining the little he has, And so his financial coach really helped him to think about wealth as a long-term game. And I think the very key takeaway from here is that managing your wealth is not just for super rich people. It's for anyone who wants to keep what they've earned. No matter how much you've earned, you probably, they say comparison kills joy, So you may compare what the savings you have in your account to other people's savings, or you may be working in an institution where you have access to see other people's savings or investments, and you may feel discouraged. But the main takeaway here is your little savings doesn't prevent you from planning how you would save and invest. It's for everyone. And if you're at the point where you have something small saved up, you should think about how quickly it can disappear if it's not managed well. We've heard several stories of people coming into money, and without a plan, the money just goes anywhere. So you should you should ask yourself the question, okay, what would I do if I suddenly come into money that I've not budgeted for, I've not planned for? And we've spoken about this on the podcast a lot of times, that you should give yourself some time to think about it and not make expenses that you would regret later. So that was a very good life lesson from Jalen's story. No matter how much comes your way, as long as it's unexpected, take your time with it. Take some time. If you need to speak to someone, speak to the person before you start spending. The urge may be strong, but do your best, and you will realize that that decision was a very good one. Now let's switch the story to another person. That was Ariana. So a little bit of background story. Ariana is a single mother, and she also struggles with debts and overspending. So Ariana has a good income, but her problem is efficiency. She is unable to save or manage her money. So for her, she was a first generation college graduate, and she bemoans the fact that she wasn't taught about the disadvantage with taking on so much loans at a very young age. And she being pushed into taking student loans for education at such high interest rates. And now she's sitting on over $108,000 in student loans with 2 kids, and she has no idea how she's going to pay it off. She also gives us another part of her story where she learns to use credit cards from a very young age. You know, when you are young, there's adrenaline in your system, you spend more. So she bought things she couldn't afford. She followed friends to buy clothes she couldn't afford, and even go to places she couldn't afford. And all those habits have stayed with her till now, or till the time the documentary was being shot, such that because she does everything to make herself happy, she also wants to make her 2 kids happy. So she buys a lot of stuff for them. And at a point in the show, she was like, when she looks at the stuff, all she sees was dollar signs on top of them, you know, expensive stuff in the house just to make the kids happy. And so her financial coach, who was Tiffany, really helped her in her story. She helped Ariana create a budget and then track her expenses, and taught her the importance of discipline because she really needed it in her story. So to be specific, they worked on something very interesting. She taught her about the 50-30-20 rule, which is something we often preach on the podcast, or any financial literacy enthusiast often repeats this. That is, out of the revenue or income that you earn, 50% should go to your needs, 30% to your wants, and then 20% to your savings and debt repayment. And before you spend any money at all, you need to ask yourself these 4 questions. Do I need what I'm buying? Do I love what I'm buying? Do I like it? And do I want it? And it's easy to group it into need and then love, and then like and want. So think of it as need and love on one side, and like or want on one side. For your needs and love, these are the things that you need to maintain the health and safety of yourself, your family, and things that if you sat down and then you have more money, you will do that will make you very happy. And for your likes and your wants, these are things that bring you joy but don't last. So it could be something you desired in the short term, you just wanted to see how it feels, but it's just temporary satisfaction. So Tiffany helped Ariana think of the things she's spending on this way, just so she doesn't spend on anything that she didn't really need. I don't know, Adam, if you have any thoughts on this technique that Tiffany taught Ariana.
Yeah, I think it was quite a simple way of developing discipline and budgeting. I mean, because for someone like her, in the beginning, she had said that she was an emotional spender. So she had a challenge with discipline. And so if she was supposed to be worked through maybe probably the zero budget, or, assigning every single dollar and going through, probably it would have felt a bit overwhelming for her. So I think this method was quite simple, easy to do, and I think in the long run we saw that it was beneficial. She was able to trim down her expenses. I mean, was able to now live within what she was earning and not rely on the credit cards a lot, because, as you said earlier, she grew up and she was introduced to credit cards quite early in life. So that's all she's known, and that's what she has used in all her life, basically. And so it was quite difficult to break out of it. But this was quite a simple way of going about it, where you just categorize the thing, broadly speaking. Know what is your wants, what do you love, and as her coach had told her, what you love and what you need are the things that help you. They are the things that make you live life more fully. And then as for the things that you like and the things that you want, they are the ones that are basically like they are taken away from you. You understand? So having that simple framework and working with it was a good way of bringing in the discipline to her money matters and be able to work with it. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant points there then. And so I think Tiffany said something. Let me just get it. So when you focus on what you need and love, you are living more of your life. And when you focus on what you like and want, you are living less of your life, So, I mean, it goes back to Butcher's point. If you really group the things you are buying in these 4 categories, it helps you prioritize, as we are always saying, on what you really need and want, and love, as opposed to what you like and want. And it can help you save some money, actually, which you can put in your savings or actually invest. So those were very good lessons from Ariana's story as well. Now, let's move to Kim and John. And Kim and John are not your ordinary couple, So a bit of context. John is an engineer. And when COVID hit, where a lot of companies had to lay off a lot of staff, he was affected and is now a stay-at-home dad. And Kim, the wife, is a therapist and a women's empowerment coach. And as at the time the documentary was being made, she was making close to $350,000 a year. So that income, in part, influenced their decision to make John a stay-at-home dad because he was laid off. And now they are at a point where they are thinking of how to retire early. And they had the perfect coach to help them, who was called Pete, or affectionately Mr. Money Mustache. And so he taught them how he retired at an early age. I think he retired around 30, 31. And the lesson he gave them was that he was making $80,000 a year as an engineer. And so because of his desire to retire early, he decided to cut back drastically on his expenses by about half and invest the surplus in an index fund, like a fund that tracks the S&P 500. And once his investment reached a point where he thought it was enough to live on, he was able to retire. It sounds simple, but it's not so simple. So for him, his definition of enough to live on was about having around 25 times your living expenses in investments. And so for context, if your expenses are 100,000 cedis a year, you need, or say your expenses are, 100,000 cedis a year, you need 2,500,000 cedis in investments to sustain your lifestyle. And I don't know how he did it, but for him, he did it. And So for him, his main lesson was it's not the income that matters, it's your spending choices. So he attributes his success to retiring early on being able to control his spending choices. And this is the advice he gave to Kim and John. I don't know, Adam, whether you have any thoughts on Mr. Mani Mustache's plan and advice he gave to Kim and John.
Yeah, I think his advice was very, very good, and it was also interesting. For me, when I got to that part, it also made me think, especially where he started pinpointing to the very details about expenditure and the little things you can spend money on, especially those random impulse buying. Like, for example, you use the example of, let's say, you bought maybe something for like $40. You just bump into something, say, oh, you like this thing, very nice. Maybe, okay, let's say it's about $10 or something. And then you do that 3 times in a day, and that translates to about $30. And by the time you're realizing that singular kind of repeated kinds of impulse purchases would lead you to spending tens of thousands of dollars, which, if it had been invested, would have translated to a certain amount, like huge amounts of money. So it's the same principle he was trying to tell them, that, if you look at your expenses very carefully, there are some impulse buyings you could do, or unnecessary expenses that you could incur, that eventually add up, especially for those ones that are repetitive. They add up in the long time or in the long run. So that's, for me, when I got to that point, I started questioning myself and trying to look at my own self and see what are those random little monies I have been spending that are adding up and I'm not realizing. So I thought that was nice. I mean, that's a very detailed oriented approach. That means you are really paying attention to every single thing. I think eventually we should all aspire to get to that point where we are very, very much on top of what we are spending, because we need to know where our money is going and prevent the leakages, which could eventually bring a lot of money to us if we should rather channel them into investments. Yeah,
those are some very good points, And I remember the part where she did the calculations with them, and they came to the conclusion that it would take them 21 years from the time they were doing the calculation to retire. And then that was when they realized, whoa, they had to adjust things, even though they were on a $350,000 a year income, And so you could also try that for yourself. Just try to estimate your living expenses. Try your very possible best to capture everything, and try 25 times of that and see how far you are from your retirement goals, This is all will also form part of your retirement plan, and see where you are in life, where you want to go, and then you can also make better financial decisions from there. So those are some very brilliant points there. And so these are some very unique stories, and each of them have brilliant points for us to consider. And as you are watching this episode and then going through the stories, there are some questions you can ask yourself, Questions like, what's one area of my finances that I'm currently avoiding? And why do I think it's that? So you never know, there's some part of your finances you are avoiding, and you don't want to touch on that part because it would open a can of worms. But once you're able to do this introspection and honest self-assessment, try to be honest with yourself about these expenses you are making, you'll find out about all the missed opportunities and the blind spots that exist in your financial life, and you can make amends. You could also ask yourself, what's more important to me? Financial freedom or immediate gratification? and how do I balance the two? So from Ariana's story, the financial coach taught her that can group your needs into the things you buy into your needs, and then the loves, and then the likes, and then the wants. And then this question can really help you assess your expenses and yourself in that manner. And it will also help you to explore the tension that exists between you saving for the future and enjoying the present. And then one more question you can also ask yourself is that if I had to cut one major expense from my life today to save more, what would it be? And this comes back to Kim and John's story, where cutting back on one simple expense, or even from Jalen's story, where he could have cut back on buying more jewelry to invest in the S&P. And this could help you, this question in particular, could help you consider where you are overspending and what you could live without. Because most of the time, the things that take up a huge chunk of our expenditure, apart from our housing, food, and transportation, we could live without them. So try to assess yourself with some of these questions, and it would be really good for you going forward, whether you just started on your financial literacy journey or you are a bit experienced in it. And so, wrapping up, I think there are some very key lessons. We've mentioned some already, but I think the very big takeaway from my side is that financial literacy is a journey, not a destination. And we highlighted that, I think, last week when we had our episode on why financial literacy is a very good decision for you to start early in life. And so from these unique stories, it doesn't matter whether you are in debt or you are earning 6 figures, 7 figures. There's always something for you to learn, because nothing lasts long. You have to hold on to what you have very closely and very tightly. And the show was really good. It really also highlights that with the right knowledge, with the right discipline, and with the right help from experienced people and people who know how to handle money, anyone at all can get smarter with money. No one is too far gone. So whether you are struggling with debt, credit card debt is not popular in Ghana, but whether you're struggling with debt, whether you have a windfall of money, some inheritance coming your way, you don't know what to do with it, ask someone. Do your research, because financial literacy, getting wealthy, it starts with small intentional steps. And you can get to your destination if you take those intentional steps. I don't know if you have any peculiar insights you would love to share, and any final words for our audience.
You've already said. I also would like to rehash the point that it's a journey, financial independence, financial literacy, getting your money issues into proper order. It's a journey. So let's take it one step at a time. If you are new to this and everything looks so confusing, just start. Let's go. Just get to the basics. Look for someone who understands things like this even far better. Learn from them. Even come up here. Look for us on our podcast, Money Convos. We've had several different discussions on different aspects of personal finance and how to prepare yourself financially for a good retirement, and also for you to be able to retire in dignity. We've talked about all of these things. You can learn from there. Take it one step at a time and then improve upon it. Review it. Sometimes you might seem like you are not making headway. I think one of our characters, I don't know whether it was Lindsay, at a point in time felt she was overwhelmed and she thought she wanted to give up, but she just came back again, or her coach encouraged her, and she was able to pull through, and eventually, she found herself in what she wanted to do with her life. So it's a journey, like we said. So take it one step at a time. There are some of the things will come in a bit easier than others. Some will also take a little while. to fall in place. But the most important thing, like we said earlier, even in the day, that a plan is even much more important than anything else. So once you're following the plan, you are definitely and destined to reach a good place and be better. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your insights, Adam. Those were really wonderful. And thank you so much for joining our episode today. And I hope you're walking away with some new ideas on how to get smarter with money, no matter how simple or small they are. And this documentary was really good, and we would recommend anyone looking to take control of their financial future to take some time, take an hour and a half to watch it and take these lessons that can set you up for life. And remember, these characters had coaches to guide them on their journey and steer them onto a good path. But in our part of the world, in Africa, in Ghana, we don't always have that here. And that is why we have an investment friend for you. So whenever you're on Instagram, just search for investment_friend and check out the page. There are basic tips for anyone looking to get started on their savings and investment journey. And if you are someone who likes more sophisticated tips, looking to invest in more sophisticated instruments, also those tips are there for you. So Investment Friend is just a DM away, and never hesitate. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And don't forget to tune in next week for another interesting conversation. Until then, please take care of yourself and your finances, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our thoughts. I hope you learned a thing or two and start practicing. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast. Do tell a friend about Money Convos so we all become wealthy together. Talk to you soon. Bye.